What's up, Sagebrush? Hi, and welcome to the weekly message discussion where we want to help you take the principles from the weekend message and apply them to your week in a meaningful way. My name is Eric, and I am with Andrew, and we are going to walk through some of the questions from our small group discussion and want to encourage you to participate in the discussion in the comments. But before we do, we want to talk about this, right? We're in the middle of our Would You Rather series. We're almost done. But we're even more excited for Christmas.
Yes.
Andrew, can you say hello to everybody and let us know where and when your family's going to be watching Christmas this year?
I would be happy to. Hey, everybody. Good to see you guys here on this Monday. It is so good to be back in the studio. We were Zooming for a couple weeks.
Remote.
But excited to be back with you guys and to be sharing with you guys on this Monday. Yeah, we are pumped for Christmas, and I love Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
Christmas is absolutely one of my favorite holidays that's ever been, and I love celebrating. And my family and I, we're watching on Christmas Eve.
Okay.
So we've scheduled out that time, and we got all the pastoral staff ready to kind of take phone calls and to text back and forth. So whether you're online, if you join us on Facebook, we're going to have pastors and different people online just to have conversations with you
and
to make
YouTube.
sure that you feel.
Facebook,
and YouTube.
Facebook and YouTube.
As well. We are equal opportunity social media people.
That's right.
And so we plan on being online, and man, it's going to be great. Worship staff as well as production, everybody has worked so hard on this service, and it'll be a different year for us, but I am really, really pumped for it.
Yeah, so make sure you check out sagebrush.church/Christmas. Somebody go ahead and put that in the comments right now because that'll show you the ways you could watch, the times you could watch. Basically, on Christmas Eve, we're going to have the on-demand service ready at 7:30 in the morning so you can schedule out whenever you want. We're going to have special times where we're going to be going live on Facebook and on YouTube where if you want to participate in the comments just like this, or maybe you're socially distancing from other family, other friends this year, and you want to make sure that you stay connected, we would love to be connected with you on Facebook or YouTube. And as always, we are going to be on TV. There's about 1 billion TV times wherever you're watching in the Albuquerque, El Paso, Belize area. We are covering all of that. But you can always reach us online, sagebrush.church/Christmas. Okay, transitioning in here. Andrew, we're going to be talking through a couple questions here from the small group curriculum. And based on this past week's message, can you get us up to date, like where we are in the series?
Sure. We have been in an incredible series called Would You Rather? And we've been talking about the choices that you make and how your choices really shape the whole direction of your life. And so we talked through a number of different choices, the choice to be either selfish or to be kind, the choice to be arrogant and proud or to be gentle with other people. And so, man, this has been a great series. And this last week, we talked all about being a promise keeper rather than the choice to be a promise breaker, which almost no one chose to be a promise breaker this last week. So
Not intentionally, anyway.
Not intentionally. They might have misraised their hand. But
Right, yeah, exactly. So you can answer along in the comments, or if you're watching with your small group, hit pause and discuss with your group if you're watching later. If you're sitting here watching this and you're going, I don't know what the heck a small group is, go ahead and go to sagebrush.church/groups. We're going to put the link in the description below, or if you're not a part of a group and you want to be, this is a great time to be. Just let us know. Our pastoral team would love to help you get connected. Now, we typically start each group with an icebreaker, and this is typically a fun, lighthearted icebreaker.
Yes.
So here's your fun, lighthearted icebreaker for this week. Would you rather have no one show up at your wedding or no one show up at your funeral?
this is a hard one for me because I don't know. So if nobody shows up for your wedding, does that include your bride or your groom?
I guess, maybe.
Or you just by yourself?
So let's assume you have to have the two people getting married, the officiant, and a witness, because legally that's a wedding.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Outside of that.
Outside of that, though. Okay. So I would say no one show up at my funeral. If nobody showed up at my funeral, that would be rough, dude. Because...
Oh, you'd rather not. Okay.
Yes.
So you would rather have...
I would rather have people show up to my wedding.
Okay, got it.
But the idea of nobody showing up at my funeral is kind of scary because then you haven't made an impact in the world, or you haven't done anything to make a difference. And man, if your kids don't show up at your funeral, your wife doesn't show up at your funeral, man, that would be a really, really bad day.
Yeah, I think I want to pause and just acknowledge this too, because some of you might be watching and you're going like, this has been a reality for 2020 where we've had weddings and you've officiated weddings in 2020 where it's like
two people.
Yeah, very few people are there. And some of them are planned elopements, which is great. Others are not, and that's not awesome. And the same thing with funerals. You know, there's been a reduction in the amount of people there too. So I think this gives us a real take on like what it would look like. And I got to say, being somebody who's officiated funerals and weddings, I would much rather officiate a funeral. And I I would much rather have no one show up at my wedding than no one show up at my funeral. You know what I mean? That's the case. Because like, what did you outlive all of the people that you care about?
Yes.
Is that good or not? Like, or
Yeah,
like
you were
said,
120 years old.
Yeah,
so
or you're a promise breaker and you're just a terrible human being that nobody wants to be around, or you died without significance. Right?
Exactly.
Okay. So let us know. Most people
Just an easy one to break the ice. That was great.
That's right. Yeah, super easy. We're a little bit split in the comments. Funeral, wedding, here it is, back and forth. But anyway, so that'll be fun for you to talk to. I mean, not lighthearted dinner conversation with your family is great.
Pass the piece.
So as we go,
That'll be good.
as we go into the questions, you got me on that one. Here's the first question based on what we talked about this weekend. How would you define faithfulness, and why do you think faithfulness in other people is such an important quality to us? Answer below. Andrew, what do you think?
Yeah, I think for me, faithfulness is easily defined as just the idea of being loyal and consistent. Whether that's to another person or whether that's to a job or anything, I would describe those things as faithful. So when I think about stories of faithfulness, or when I think about people who are consistent that way, I would say a person who's been married for like over 50 years. Congratulations. I mean, you have been so faithful to that other person. The person who's worked for a company for over 30 years in this world that's filled with like millennials that don't stay. This is
Watch
like, I know, I'm sorry, Eric, for your generation. But man, I think people don't stay. And so that person who has spent 30 years at a job or in a corporation or contributing to a cause, that's absolutely outstanding. That shows faithfulness. It's that person who stands by your side no matter what. I would describe them as a faithful friend. And that person is, just that person just typifies that idea of being consistent as well as loyal and faithful to the other person. I think all of us want people to be faithful. You know, we want a friend that's always by your side. You want that friend who always walks with you. The question then becomes is, are you being that friend? Right?
Yep.
It's easy for me to say, yeah, I want that friend that dotes on me, who's always by my side. They call me up all the time. But have I really thought through how to really be that friend to another person? Am I consistent? Am I loyal to that other person? So that's for me. What about for you?
Yeah, I like loyal and consistent as a little bit of your definitions there. In the comments here, Joyce says loyal to people. Donna says commitment, dependable. Vanessa says faithfulness is being loyal, honor, somebody of honor, and being dedicated. I think those are all good examples, and I like how flexible faithfulness is.
Yeah.
Right. Because when I think about being faithful, there's two main ones that stick out to me. One is like faithful to God, right?
Yeah.
And then the other is like faithful to your spouse. Right. So think about either one of those. If you break either one of those, there's a huge gap in trust.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's where I'm thinking, why is it so important for faithfulness in other people? Is really if I look at somebody that I can trust. Right. So trustworthiness might be it, but it's more of like trust in a relationship. So if I could trust you to do what you say, to say what you're, to say what you mean, to be around when you need to be around, like trustworthiness is huge. And I think we've talked about it before, but trust is a tough thing to mend once it's broken. So I think that's why faithfulness is so important. Let's see here. A couple people in the comments, if I could just see here real quick. Joyce says she's been with her husband for 42 years.
Way to go, Joyce!
That's almost to the 50. You're right around the corner.
Good job.
Right there. That's faithfulness for sure. We're going to go to the Bible right away this week. We're going to be in Ecclesiastes 5:2-6. Ecclesiastes all the way kind of to the left in your Bible, if you will. Okay. All right. Just in case. I always get Ecclesiastes. I'm like Ecclesiastes, Ephesians. I get a little of that dyslexia.
It's in the Old Testament.
Okay, so all the way on the other side. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 2-6. Don't make rash promises and don't be hasty in bringing matters before God. After all, God is in heaven and you are here on earth. So let your words be few. Too much activity gives you restless dreams. Too many words make you a fool. Oh boy, I know that's true. When you make a promise to God, don't delay in following through, for God takes no pleasure in fools. Keep all the promises you make to him. It is better to say nothing than to make a promise and not keep it. Don't let your mouth make you sin, and don't defend yourself by telling the temple messenger that the promise you made was a mistake. That would make God angry, and he might wipe out everything you have Achieved. All right, feel good verse for your Monday morning.
There you go.
Question, according to these verses, how can we take steps to fight against unfaithfulness and breaking promises? Any background you want to give us on this?
Yeah, I think Ecclesiastes is a great. It's written by the smartest man who ever walked the face of the earth, King Solomon, and he wrote it from the perspective of trying to figure out what are the most important things in life and what's really meaningful. And he really explores every single avenue, and he kind of arrives at that place where, man, fearing and loving God is probably the most important thing that you can ever do. And here's one of those moments where Solomon, in a moment of clarity, really gives us this guidance on really how do we keep the promises and the importance of keeping promises. And surprise, Eric, in this one, I see 3 steps.
3 steps.
3 easy steps.
And an acronym, or are they?
No, not an acronym.
Okay, alliteration?
I couldn't go that far.
Okay.
But 3 steps that you can really keep your promises. I think at the very beginning, it talks about let your words be few. So use few words when you make promises. Don't be verbose and don't just overdo it with words. And sometimes I get very wordy and I like to talk a lot.
Yep.
Which isn't
Same.
quite a surprise for the Facebook audience today.
Yeah.
But I like to talk a lot. So you got to let your words be few when you're speaking to God or when you're trying to make a promise with another person. Then don't delay. You know, man, when you make a promise, don't put it off in like contributing to that promise or making that thing happen. You need to make it happen right then and there. Don't just put it on the back burner and go, well, someday I'll get around to it and I'll follow through with that thing that I told God that I was going to do. You need to do it just in that moment. And that's what we see around here a lot of times at church is people who delay. They say, oh, I really want to get baptized, but you know, I'm going to wait till it's warmer, or, oh, I'm going to wait until I'm ready, or I'm going to wait till my kids can get baptized with me. And where it's like, don't put that off. You know, if God laid that on your heart, make it happen. And then the third one is keep those promises that you make.
Okay. Let your words be few, don't delay, and keep your promises.
Keep those promises. Okay. I mean, if you tell that temple messenger that you're going to keep your promise, you don't want all that stuff wiped away.
Yeah. What's that modern equivalent of the temple messenger, you think?
I think, man, signing up for something at church, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, is the temple messenger, or I think commitment to a friend or commitment to a family member. You know, man, when you make that promise to another person, you got to hold to that promise.
Yeah, it feels like that's like an official, you know, because the temple in some cases would have been just religious, and in other cases might have been also religious and government.
Yeah.
So
and business too.
Could be both. So maybe you're a student, you know, and it's your teacher, whoever it is, you know, letting them know and keeping that promise that you made. So I like your 3. In the comments here, it said that the steps that we could fight against unfaithfulness and breaking promises, one would be treat people the way you would want to be treated. Because I think in there too, when you read and you say, okay, how are you acting towards God, and he's going to get angry about it? Well, yeah, I mean, if you did the same thing to me, I'd get angry too. And then another one is to think through before I speak, and I think that's great. That is one that I'm trying, and as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at, but I'm still not mastering it because I'm a verbal processor, so I work things out by talking.
Yes.
But I have to be careful what audiences I'm talking in front of, so that way it's not taken as a promise. It's not taken as something that I'm saying that I'm going to do without following through.
Correct.
So really monitoring who those are. But I mean, there are some just if I could wake up and have this echo in my brain every morning, you know, don't make rash promises. Don't be hasty in bringing matters before God. Like some of these things, like too much activity gives you restless dreams. How many of us have this anxiety where when your head hits your pillow, I mean, like me, and I just think about all the stuff I didn't do today, or all the stuff I have to do tomorrow, or all of the promises that I made that I have to keep. Because for me, I love saying yes, and I love helping people.
You are the nicest guy.
Oh, thanks, man. But, you know, too many words, it says make you look like a fool. And when you can't fulfill those things that you've told other people, it's not just being unfaithful. You look like a fool.
You do.
And I said this to a friend the other day. I said, you know what? I might as well have the permanent taste of shoe polish in my mouth with this often as I've put my foot right in there. So like, you know, a wise proverb my dad always used to say is a closed mouth gathers no feet. So if you could just... You like that one? You write that one?
That's good.
That's Proverbs something. No, just kidding. That is not in the scriptures. Kind of, but not really. So yeah, keeping that mouth shut in cases where you think you should say something. How many times is it just better not to say something in an argument?
Yes.
Is it better not to just, you know...
I don't know why they let the 2 most talkative guys come on camera every Monday.
It's great.
It's crazy.
Hey, you know what? Lori's in here. She says she likes to talk too, Andrew, okay? So we've got talks. If you're a talker... let us know. Like, give it up for the talkers in here.
Yes.
That maybe you struggle, maybe you don't struggle with this problem, but you just talk.
Yes.
Okay, so let us know on that one. All right, moving on. Next question. This is a lot of fun. I love Mondays. Mondays are my favorite. When was a time where you broke a promise you made to someone, and how did it hurt you or other people?
I think I'll let you answer this one first.
No, I don't think so. I think you got to answer it first.
Okay. For me, I think this is a hard one, but I think back to my younger days, and I went on a bunch of different mission trips, and I still remember, like, the very first mission trip that I ever went to was to Russia.
Yeah.
And it was like just a year after, like, Russia had opened up to missionaries and everything, and so we went to take in Bibles, got to know Russians and everything like that, and it was an incredible trip. Only went for a week. But sure enough, at the end of the trip, I'm doing the typical high schooler thing where it's like, oh man, I love you guys. I'll see you next year.
We'll be back.
Man, I'm gonna write you every day. I'm gonna miss you. I'm gonna be back. And I made all those promises. And sure enough, as a 17-year-old kid, I had no idea what I was committing to and what I was promising. And so I think back to that moment, and you grow in wisdom, after years of going on mission trips and different things where you know just not to say those types of things. But I really thought that. And I think that that's one thing that we do often at church as well, is where we make those promises where I used to, when I was younger, say, oh, I'll pray for you all the time. I'd walk around church and I'd be like, oh, I'll pray for you for that. And, after, 4 or 5 or 6 people on the weekend tell you that, man, I've got this thing to pray for, I realized I couldn't remember all their prayer requests. And so now you'll see me on weekend services. I'll grab people in the lobby and I'll just pray for them right then and there. Right. Because I know that, man, if I'm going to commit to them, I'm just going to do it right then and there, rather than making this false promise that I'm going to pray for them for the rest of their life and everything else. So what about for you?
Yeah, I think for me, the promise thing, it's very interesting because I've tried over the years, especially, not to make things that I agree to sound like promises for people. But there is definitely a sense of, like, when I tell somebody I'm going to do something, a lot of times that if I'm not well organized, I forget about it. Yeah. Right. And it happens all the time at work. In fact, some of the people that I work with right now, I say, hey, if I've agreed to do this, and if you've put it in our little management software system and you've emailed me about it, if it's getting close and you haven't heard from me, tell me, because I probably forgot. And I realized that although for me, I'm not intending to break promises that I've said to others. No. But for others, when you don't fulfill the thing that you said you're going to do, or you make them take an extra step of reminding you, that can come across as uncaring. And it's like, it's hard for me even now to draw that line between, like, no, I'm not uncaring. Well, my actions definitely are, right? My intent is not, but my actions definitely display that. And so to try and, we want to reserve those, or I should say, keep those relationships strong at work, at home, with your friend group, whatever it is. If you're a student, we kind of mentioned that too. If you're telling your teacher you're going to have something turned in on time, or you're going to make a meeting or something like that, those are some things that can be very hurtful. Well,
and I'm with you. I'm like you, Eric. I'm a people pleaser. I love people to like me. And so you want to help people out. And so you're making these things and you're not realizing even that you're making promises. Yeah. Exactly. And you're just thinking, oh man, I just want this person to like me. And so I'm just having a conversation and everything like that. But even in those, that's why it's so important to let your words be few. Right. Man, think about the words that you're saying, because people are adding value to the things that you're saying.
Yeah, the 2 biggest enemies in my life, I think, are current Eric and future Eric.
Yeah.
Right? It's like current Eric does not care about future Eric whatsoever. Current Eric is like, yes, I'll do that. And by I mean future Eric will do that. And then by the time future Eric gets it, it's all the things that I've agreed to do. Yeah. And future Eric is like, past Eric is no good. I don't like that guy. So
I've just learned to say I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm just sorry.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, you have to be, if you're breaking promises, you have to be able to say I'm sorry and figure out ways to fix it. So it's almost like more work.
Yes.
Anyway, okay, a couple people in the comments. Let's see. Oh, we've got some people that are talkers, that are verbal processors, that understand what's going on.
They're with us.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Appreciate
for being
that.
right there with us.
And then Vanessa says, yes, I've broken a few promises and it hurts, but yet I came back and did those promises later and I felt good doing it.
So, way to go.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to mess up. That's kind of the point. It's like, we're going to mess up. We're going to break promises. We're going to make people upset. But I think the hallmark of what we're called to do as Christians is how quickly do we rectify those relationships? How quickly do we go back and apologize and make up for it and make sure you rekindle and, restore that relationship no matter what it is. Okay. Great. 2 Timothy 4, 5 through 8. So flip your Bible, the big scoop, flip your Bible all the way over, especially if you've got one of those big fat floppy Bibles.
Yes.
That just make you more holy when you read them. Just kidding. But, maybe. Chapter 4, verse 5. But you should keep a clear mind in every situation. Don't be afraid of suffering for the Lord. Work at telling others the good news and fully carry out the ministry God has given you. As for me, my life has already been poured out as an offering to God. The time of my death is near. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race, and I have remained faithful. And now the prize awaits me, the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give me on the day of his return. And the prize is not just for me, but for all who eagerly look forward to this happening. So 2 Timothy chapter 4, knowing what you know about the life of Paul, who wrote this, right? What stands out to you about what he said in these verses? So for anybody that doesn't know about the life of Paul, what's relevant about the life of Paul for these verses?
Yeah, I think Paul was a guy who had no quit in him.
Yeah.
And Paul was a guy who really continued on no matter when it got difficult and hard. And Paul was persecuted, he was beaten, and he went through so many different things. It's important for us to remember back to his story, though, right? Because Paul at one time was a Pharisee, and Paul was a guy who actually persecuted Christians.
Yeah.
And he was locking Christians up, putting them in jail, and putting Christians actually to death. And he has this crazy conversion where Jesus meets him on the road, knocks him on his behind, and as a result, he becomes one of the best missionary throughout the whole entire world for Jesus Christ. To all those people who had never had any connection with God whatsoever, he became just one of the best missionary that ever lived. And there was no quit in this guy. And so here he is in jail for a second time, in the city of Rome. This time, it's a terrible imprisonment. He's at the very, very end, and it's not like the one before, which was cushy and easy. This one was like really, really hard.
Yeah.
So he's at the end of his life, and he's reflecting. He says, I've fought the good fight of faith. I've finished my race. And that's because Paul knew that he was finishing this race well.
Yep.
He never gave up. He kept his promise to stay faithful to the Lord, and he did throughout his life, no matter how hard it got.
Sure.
So I love that about Paul, and for me, that's just a good reminder too.
Yeah, I think there's some reminders here that are very applicable because of his life and what he's gone through. Don't be afraid of suffering for the Lord, like he obviously did. So he knows. And so it's not somebody, it's not some cushy protected pastor telling you, oh no, it's okay, don't be afraid of suffering. Like he was actually in it and he suffered and he knows, like, don't be afraid of it because it's not as bad as it is, as you think it is, or it's, it's worth it, whatever his rationale would be. But then like work at telling others the good news. That's the gospel, right? Talking about Jesus and fully carry out the ministry. So being faithful to that ministry that God has called you to, making those decisions every day to say, I've been called to the ministry of being a father to my two kids. I've been called to the ministry of being a husband to my wife. I've been called to other, whatever that is, and be faithful in those areas that God has given you. Then as he goes on, like you said, he fought the good fight. He's finished the race. He knows that at the end, it's all going to be okay. He's been faithful. God is going to be faithful as well.
Yeah, and I think about this one, just a modern example of this is when I was about 12 years old, I had a youth pastor in my life who he had just started at our church, and I still remember him looking at me and he said, Andrew, I'm going to be your youth pastor till the day that you graduate. And now most youth pastor, their lifespan is usually about 18 months.
Their lifespan.
So, they don't last very long at a church.
Yeah.
They get upset, they get tired, somebody makes fun of them, and they move on to somewhere else. But Gary looked at me and he said, Andrew, I will be your youth pastor regardless. And what he didn't know is that the senior pastor of that church was going to leave. And so it threw the church into kind of a total chaos.
Yeah.
And so it had budget shortfalls, lots of inner conflict that went on at that church and everything. But what I love is that Gary stayed faithful.
Yeah.
And he was my youth pastor for 6 years. And like on the day that I graduated from high school, I still remember him calling me up on stage with the other graduates and saying, Andrew, I stayed faithful to that promise.
Yep.
I didn't give up. And we look back at those examples of those people who are promise keepers, and that's something that's admirable to us, right? That's something that we aspire to. We want to live up. We want to be promise keepers just like that, even when it's hard and even when it's difficult, to stay faithful.
Yeah, and we've talked about this a couple of times about, kind of writing the words you want said about you at your funeral.
Correct.
Right? That's been a thing. And as somebody who's done funerals, like I said, I actually like them more than weddings,
Yeah.
because this is a case where you actually get to talk about Christ, and you get to talk about Christ
Yes.
lived out, not like hey, the two of you are getting ready to start this journey together. Take Christ with you and go along, and like make your marriage an example for him. No, you get to point at someone who's lived a life that's well and full and say, well done. Like God is up there saying, well done, good and faithful servant.
Yes.
Or you get to look at people in the, in attendance for someone that maybe that they all know that their life was not faithful.
Good. That's the
and you
hardest
get to talk about the differences and about that opportunity that they still have, that the living still has, to learn from this person, to take the good pieces and, follow that. But turn and live their life in a way of faith. And I love funerals where you have someone who's had a life well lived, whether their life was long lived or cut short, and to be able to brag on their accomplishments of faith.
So true.
You never talk about, okay, well, look at how big the car was, or look at, the guy had 10 boats and 2 houses, but it's like, you look right here and you can look and see how much their family cared about them because of their faithfulness. You get to hear the stories of the people that worked for them that talk about how great of a boss they were, or a coworker, or a faithful grandmother, or a faithful grandfather. Like, it's just amazing. And so like, I want to live my life that way so that I'm living that out, so that that's what's said about me when I have my funeral. And that transitions into here. We said over the weekend that awards get distributed at the finish line. What is promised to those who persevere in their faith, and what is one step you could take to persevere in that area where you are ready to give up?
Well, and I love what Todd said this weekend, because this is so important, right? There's no participation ribbons for this.
Right.
The rewards really get given at the finish line. And it's really for those who stay faithful to the Lord. Those people who, put in their effort and they said, you know what, I'm going to follow God and I'm going to live for him. And we know those who love the Lord keep his commandments, and they follow through with the commitment that they've made in living for him. And so I think in this, that prize that awaits is heaven.
Yep.
And we look forward to that one day of seeing God face to face, Jesus, the one who gave everything for us. And in store, that passage says there's this crown of righteousness. And that righteousness isn't because of anything we've done. It's because of what Jesus did on the cross for us. And in that moment, that's what we're looking forward to. One day where things are made right again, where we don't have to live with sin and death and pain and destruction, and where we don't have to live with this distance between us and God. We get to know God personally, walk with him, talk with him, and we get to live life as he intended it to be. So I look forward to that day. And for me, one step that I could take probably to persevere is, in COVID, I think life is just kind of a drag lately.
Yeah.
And it's been really hard, and it's been really, really difficult for all of us. And so I think one of the things that we can do is continue to say, you know what, I am going to thrive even when my circumstances on the outside are hard and difficult. I'm making that choice every day. What about for you?
Yeah, and I think maybe it depends on where you are in your faith here, but like, let's say you are seasoned in your faith and you've been a Christian for a while. This might be a good opportunity to look back and to try, and if you journal, this is great. If you don't, maybe, go through a couple of years and try to remember and talk about when were the hardest seasons of your life, and how did God maintain his faithfulness through it? And just kind of make that list.
Yeah.
This is what was tough. This is what came out of it. This is what God did for me, right? If you're newer in your faith, or maybe, you don't have a relationship with Jesus and you're just kind of watching this because maybe your husband or wife drug you into this, that's fine.
Yeah.
Write down those times where you thought about giving up and about why you were so happy that you stuck with it, right? This is something that we would do with our kids too. You just think about when was something that was really tough, and what was the benefit you had from sticking it out?
Yep.
And now that should help you go, okay, when I'm reaching these times where I want to give up, whether that's in your relationship with your spouse, whether that's in leaving the family, whether that's in your job, whatever that looks like for you, or in your faith, right? What is it that has benefited you by sticking around? And maybe where are some of the times that you've had regrets because you've left too early, right? Or you've left something and you kind of have that FOMO, or you have regrets, and think this is why God is calling us to persevere, because he's been faithful before and he will continue to do it. Do you have any tips for group leaders moving forward?
Yeah, I would say, man, one of the ways that we really make it through hard and difficult times is you got to have some friends. And inside of groups, that's the way that we encourage one another to not give up. that's the way that we really rally around one another and we cheer one another on. And so I would say for groups, our encouragement would be is pick another person to pray for maybe this week.
Yep.
Write out a card maybe for each of the persons in your group that says, hey, this is the area that I'm tempted to throw in the towel on. And then pass those out to another person so they can pray for you.
Yep.
If you're online and, man, you don't have somebody to pray for you, you don't know anybody quite like that, man, you could just message us, or somebody right now in the comments can put in our little prayer request link, and we'd love just to pray for you for whatever's going on in your life. But in all these things, man, we're here with you as a church. Don't give up. Press in, because the Lord loves it when we're faithful.
And I think if you're on the other side of that, where you're saying, hey, my life is actually pretty good. Like, for me, I felt real guilty through 2020 going like, I'm okay. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
okay.
Things are going well.
We have a
And so
job and everything
to
else.
say those things feels like, man, maybe I shouldn't because so many people are out of work or whatever like that. But it may be important now, use that to encourage someone else. So if it's on social media, find a couple of people that you could direct message. Maybe post on your social media. Just say, hey, as a reminder, don't give up. You need this. Maybe grab one of the scriptures we talked about here and post it and let people know. Text somebody. Write them a note. Find somebody that you can encourage today. Use whatever God has given you, right? Be faithful to that ministry. Maybe his ministry right now is you're in a great spot.
Yep.
And you need to help pass that encouragement on for the people that are feeling like they're ready to give up. Vic, send them this message. Send them the message from this past weekend if you need to, too. Okay, transitioning out. Also want you to join a group if you're not part of a small group. Make sure if you need to... you need any prayer or anything like that, there will be comments in there. We have pastoral team members that would love to connect with you. And the most important thing is pick a time, pick a way to watch for Christmas, sagebrush.church/Christmas. Make sure to join us. You can watch it on demand, online, on TV, watch it with us on Facebook. And anything else for the people before we let them go?
No, thanks so much, guys, for spending time with us.
Yeah, thanks for spending your lunch break with us. We will see you next Monday.